Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Sessions, A View of the Light. I am so happy to be with you guys today. It's so great to be with my spirit sisters, my soul sisters, Rhonda and Teresa. And today we have an extra special guest, one of our favorite guests that we love to bring on during spooky season. It's the one, the only, the OG of the paranormal podcast, Jim Harold. Jim, thank you for hanging out with us today.
It's always great to talk with you guys this time of the year. I kind of look forward to it. It's on the calendar every year, and I always enjoy it. And I thank you, and happy Halloween to you and your great audience.
That's so super. We're so excited to have you here today.
So great having you on always. We love hearing about all of the amazing things you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, it's a busy time here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Got a little glitch going on.
It's a little glitchy for me. Sorry. I was going to say, it's just, I want to have you just a little bit for our new listeners about how you got into the paranormal. What piqued your interest that got you into really too? And use like showing up as that mission in life to share the paranormal with others and help them to understand it better.
Well, the paranormal goes way back for me. I was a little elementary school kid watching Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, and that grew into a real interest over the years, and I continued to watch more shows like Unsolved Mysteries and read books and so forth. And in 2005, I had been a broadcast student, but I ended up working on the business side of media. And I heard about this thing called podcasting, where you could basically have like your own radio show from your house. And I thought, well, since I'm not going to be able to be in front of the mic professionally, this will be a great kind of hobby. It'll be an outlet. This would be a neat thing to do. What will I do a podcast on? And I said, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but the fact is that what did I always gravitate to when I went to a bookstore or a library or look stuff up on the early internet? And it was always the paranormal. I'm like, well, this will be great because I'll be able to kind of, do the broadcasting piece, which I was very passionate about. And also kind of satisfy my curiosity about the paranormal. And the funny thing is, back in 2005, when I started this, I thought, geez, this will be great because I'll do this for 6 months and I'll have all the answers. And 18 years later, it didn't turn out to be that way. I actually have more questions than I have answers now. So it's been quite the journey.
That's probably a good thing to have more questions. I always find out if we have questions, then at least we're absorbing some of the information. Because without it, it's like being in math class and just being that kid that says, I don't get it.
Well, sometimes, to be honest, I don't get it. It's kind of like the paranormal and the supernatural has kind of like, sometimes we talk about shapeshifters, and it has almost like a shape-shifting kind of capability in the sense that once you think you have it figured out, it kind of turns its way around on you, and maybe you don't have it figured out so much. So, yeah, it's always a moving target, and it's always fascinating.
This year, do you have one of your spookiest stories that are coming? Like, what one's keeping you up at night this year? Because I've listened to a lot. And
yeah, this actually, one of the more memorable ones, and it might not be the kind that you would necessarily think. Because sometimes, like the ones of these entities and houses and things, they're frightening, but the ones that stick with me are kind of a little bit different. There was one from a few months ago, I think back in May, that really stuck with me. This guy called in, he said, this happened 10, 20 years ago when he's attending college. And he was at the quad, the green space where all the kids hang out and study and all that stuff. You kind of picture it in your mind's eye. And he kind of saw this one guy he knew, and the guy was barefoot, and he was walking through the quad. And he kind of waved at him and waved back, thought nothing else of it. And then that weekend he was talking with some friends. He said, well, such and such day, Thursday, when I was in the quad, I saw so-and-so, and it was kind of weird because he was walking barefoot through the quad. And they told him, oh, you didn't hear. And he said, no, I didn't hear. What are you talking about? Oh, I think his name was Alex or something. I was like, oh, Alex died on Monday. So those kind of things, and it's not like this big, scary, spooky haunting. I mean, the guy didn't have horns. He didn't look transparent or anything like that. But it's the stories like that that kind of get me. Those kind of things that seem normal at the time, but upon reflection, they're not normal at all. And that's one that sticks out this year for me. Even though it's a very simple story, sometimes the simplest stories are the most impactful, I find.
Because they've got a real feel of reality to them. Like
right. And, we've had a lot of haunted hotels. It was funny because I did a show on haunted hotels a couple of weeks ago, and we were doing this show, and it's like, oh, here are a couple more haunted hotel stories. And to me, if you think about places that could be haunted, hotels make a lot of sense. Because think about it. People, first of all, there's a ton of people going through them, right? And there's a lot of emotion tied to it. Because what do you go to a hotel for? You go to a hotel maybe for a business trip. Well, you're at a business trip, you're full of angst. Is this presentation going to go well? Am I going to get this job? Those kind of things. So there's a lot of human energy. Or maybe you go to a hotel for some kind of celebration or vacation, and there's a lot of emotion and a lot of feeling behind it. You're happy about something. Maybe you're there for a wedding. You're there for an anniversary. You're there to have, a week away from the rat race. Or maybe you go to a hotel because a family member has passed and you're staying to go to the funeral. So much emotion. So hearing those haunted hotels stories do not surprise me in the least. One time I was at a hotel out west. I won't name it. A beautiful hotel, and it literally looked like something out of Central Casting. You walked in, it was all kind of this dark wood. It was built in, I think, the early 1920s, and it looked the part. And they had this big glass case that had one of the original hotel directories from the 1920s, and people signed in with this big ornate writing and things. Had an old telephone there. And I was there, and it didn't even occur to me because I was there to appear on a TV show. And until the last day or so, it didn't even occur to me, this place has to be haunted. And I looked it up, and I said, I got to talk to somebody and ask them about it. And I did approach someone or ask someone, and they said, we don't talk about that. So... So the point is that haunted places and spaces are all around us, and I think any place can be haunted, but I think those hotels are some interesting cases, definitely.
Rhonda, you're muted.
I don't think we're hearing Rhonda. I think she might be muted.
I muted myself. I'm sorry. I was wondering if you've ever had a personal experience at a hotel, because you probably have traveled around a lot now, and anything creepy happen?
No. It's funny because I have had weird happenings in my life, and I may have shared some of them on the show. I can't remember this show. But they're not traditional hauntings. I have weird synchronicities that happen. That's kind of my flavor of quote paranormal experiences. I don't have hauntings per se. I think one time when I was a child, I remember walking through my house, and our house was long. So the way it worked, we kind of had what we called two sides of the house, and they were connected with a small hallway. And I know for a fact everyone was on one side of the house, and I thought I saw somebody pass me in the little hallway. And it's always kind of stuck with me way before I ever did the paranormal stuff. But to your point, my experiences are way more synchronistic. Did I ever tell you the story that happened to me on the cruise? Did I ever tell you that one?
Oh, tell us again, because I think it was something about your uncle.
Yes. That's the story. And I guess it's kind of like a cruise is like a floating hotel, right? So that was for business because I was appearing as a paranormal personality, I guess, on the cruise. So it was getting to be my time to speak, and I had a little bit of cold, as I do today. So if my voice sounds a little rough, I'm just recovering from a cold, so I apologize in advance. But anyway, so I thought, I'll get something warm to drink from the cafe. And the cruise line, in their wisdom, we had a nice little conference room there. They put the cafe on the other side of the casino, so you have to go through the casino. They hoped that maybe they could get some of your money on the way to the cafe. And I noticed as I was coming out of it that there was a guy there from our group, one of the attendees who I'd become friendly with, and he was playing this crane game where money would come down and you'd try to grab it with one of those claw cranes. And it really struck me at that time because my uncle, who had passed away a few years earlier, loved those games. He would go into a store and he'd come out into the little lobby there and he'd drop, $10 trying to get the little toy plushie or whatever out of it. And he had no interest in those toys. He'd give them away to kids. But he just, for the sport of it, and he said he would love this. He would get to play this game and play for money because he wasn't a big gambler, but he liked to, bet on the occasional football game and things like that. I said, man, I wish he were here. All of a sudden, there's this woman standing next to this contraption, this crane machine, and she goes, John. Well, strangely enough, my uncle who had passed, his name was John. Oh. And to me, that was him and the universe and God, or whatever you want to call all of it, conspiring together to say, hey, you thought of me, you thought of John, and John is here, and he's thinking of you. And the husband or whoever has walked up to this woman. And I mean, again, could it have been a coincidence? Maybe. But I don't think so. We just had a story submitted actually on our virtual campfire group. And I hope they come on the campfire show, because we have a great virtual campfire group. We have over 25,000 people there signed up to it. And you can find that at virtualcampfiregroup.com, virtualcampfiregroup.com. That's an easy URL. It'll take you right over to the Facebook page. But this woman said that her and her dad and her mom used to love to play Scrabble together. This was an adult woman. And unfortunately, her mom died a couple of years ago. And not too long ago, they were playing Scrabble. And they were discussing her mom. They were, laughing and joking and kind of remembering her fondly while they were playing this game. And all of a sudden, the next draw comes out, where the letters come, you scramble the letters. And the next draw was P-O-O-H-B-E-A. Her mom's nickname for her was Pooh Bear. Huh. Yeah. Those are the stories that get me. Because it's obvious to me that falls into the category of what I call too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
A lot of times with the shows, we'll headline with the spooky show and the spooky story and the scary story, because honestly, I could put, I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here. I could put two different headlines on a show. It's exactly the same show. The one headline could be Haunted Mansion. Okay. Although we know that's Disney, but you get the idea. Haunted, put the name in here. And it would be true. There would be a story on a haunted library or a haunted hotel or whatever it is. And I could take that same show and I could put the title Warm Message from the Other Side. And Warm Message from the Other Side will get a third of the downloads of Haunted Whatever. So people tend to want to always lead with the scary, spooky. That's what grabs them. But I kind of look at it, like when your parents would make one of your favorite meals, but they would also put those vegetables there. That they say, you gotta eat your vegetables too. You can't just have the whatever it is. that's kind of way I look at. I like to mix in the spooky, scary stories with the heartwarming ones, because I think it's very demonstrative of what the paranormal really is. I think the paranormal is an extension of the normal, and it's a gamut, right? I mean, I personally don't believe that the other side or the spirit world is all sweetness and light. I think there are more sinister energies sometimes, but many times, maybe even more times, I think there are very sweet and reassuring spirits out there as well. And I'm thinking you guys would agree with me on that. So I think it's important to kind of portray the whole continuum, not just the spooky, ooky stories, although we have had those, our share of those over the years, and I do love to hear those as well. I think we lost Rhonda, apparently.
What's happening? So I was going to tell you, actually, it is. I had a too much coincidence to be a coincidence experience last week. And it's funny because I use that line on my teenagers, by the way. When something's up, I will say, it's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. So that's my parenting technique now.
Excellent.
But I had fallen asleep, and this is a spoiler for anybody who hasn't watched the Harry Potter movies, so I apologize. But I had fallen asleep watching The Half-Blood Prince and was dozing off at the scene where Dumbledore dies. And that was always a scene that got me. I woke up the next morning and the world was talking about Dumbledore had died in real life, the man who played Dumbledore. And it blew my mind. I was like, what timeline am I in? What just happened? It was very crazy.
It's amazing how things line up. It really is. It is a real thing. And sometimes there are true coincidences, but I think many times things line up in a way maybe to bring us a message, to communicate directly, whatever it might be. I think these are basically in some ways engineered coincidences.
Yeah. Do you think there's like glitches in the timeline too, where we kind of skip ahead and then fall back? Or
oh yeah. One of my favorite stories like that, I don't know if I ever shared it on the show, but it was a man who was undergoing a health crisis, cancer. And luckily, last time I heard from him, probably a year or several months ago, he's doing fine. And this story was very early in the campfire. It's probably like 2010 or something like that. And him and his wife went to see a movie called Hellboy, which, it's a pretty old movie now. But he would go to the movies to try to get his mind off of, his health situation, which is understandable. You want a couple hours of escapism. And they went in, and it was light. And they got their popcorn and all the stuff you do, the concessions, and then they go in. And they go in, and they sit down, and they think at first it's the trailers playing. And it's like... and the movie was supposed to start, I think, something like 4:00 or something like that. And they're thinking, this is weird. This is not the trailers. This is the end of the movie. And this was a place, it wasn't one of these places where they have one movie on 4 different screens. It was one movie. This Hellboy was only playing on one screen. They went in around 4, it was supposed to start 4:00. They went in right before that. And then they realize they are watching the end of the movie. And the movie ends and everybody leaves. And I'm like, God, this has got to be some kind of mistake. The movie was supposed to start at 4:00. They get up and they ask an usher. And this guy apparently was very fond of timepieces of watches. So he remembered. He always watched the time. He's big on time. So he noted the time it was supposed to start. He asked the usher, he's like, what time is it? Do you happen to have the time? He's like, yeah, it's 5:45. Somehow, an hour and 40 minutes had just jumped. Now, it might not be the exact length of time, but that was the idea. The whole length of the movie had jumped. There had been a time slip. And when they went out, and I think this was kind of like in the winter or something, it was dark. And they had just walked into the theater mere moments ago. How do you account for that? I don't know. I don't know how you account for that. I have one caller, Sandy, who, if anybody's listening anytime, has been a listener from day one. She told a story when she was young. She was walking down the road. She was looking at her feet. She looked up and she was basically in like the 1890s or something, or 1880s. And everything was like kind of like the Old West almost. And then she continued to walk. And at some point she looked back down her feet and it was back to the present day. And I fully believe that. I believe that somehow, some way there are glitches and they result in these wild, wild time slips. And sometimes maybe ghosts are not ghosts per se, but there's something from the future or the past. One of my favorites, and I probably told it on the show, is the peanut butter story. A little kid is walking through the hallway of his house. He walks past the kitchen and he sees a hooded figure making a peanut butter sandwich. And then he runs away. He's like, what was that? Kind of always bothered him. Several years later, same kid, teenager at that point. He's wearing his hoodie in the kitchen, minding his own business, making a peanut butter sandwich. And he looks and he sees this small figure of what looks like a boy scurrying through the hallway and then running away. Did those timelines cross? I don't know the answer, but I believe that's real and I believe those things happen.
Sort of like little portals that get, made or opened because of sun energy that's, pouring out at us, or, just that they exist because of magnetic fields and everything else, eh? Have you, I always watch those videos where the plane is stuck in the sky as they're driving past and you're going like, is that a real video? Or
right.
You've seen those ones.
Well, I'll tell you, video evidence is tough. I used to do a show years ago. It was actually very early. Everybody does video now and it's on YouTube and stuff. But for YouTube even, I was doing a show called The Paranormal Report. And what we would do is we would talk, and it was video, and we would talk about different cases, and then we would present video that we found on the internet that was supposedly proof. And I actually stopped doing that show, and one of the big reasons I stopped doing it was I found it so frustrating because so many things could be faked. So video to me is really tough, particularly now, because so many things can be faked. And now that is not to say that all paranormal videos, whether they be of ghosts or orbs or UFOs or cryptid creatures, wherever, that they're all fake. I do not believe that they're all fake. But it's very easy to fake them, if that makes sense. So, I think before I would put a ton of stock into any kind of video like that, I'd have to know where it came from, who took it, and those kind of things. And again, that's not to say that people don't take legitimate video of real things that happen. I believe that they do, but it's like a needle in a haystack, now somebody with like a garden variety computer can make it look like that old movie Independence Day and have the aliens come down. So really it depends on the source, and it's so hard to track down. So I'm a little skeptical on videos without knowing the source.
Yeah, I can see that, especially the UFO videos where they have a light in the sky. Like people say, did you take a video of it? I said, it looks like a light in the sky. Like,
yeah, it's
really
so tough because even cell phones, I mean, I just got the most, I'm a sucker. I got the most recent iPhone 15. So I'm a sucker, but even those are not particularly good at taking nighttime pictures. I mean, they're amazing. You could actually, but taking pictures of the sky or things, that's very tough. You have to be a very good photographer. So even if you see something compelling with the naked eye, it doesn't a lot of times translate. And the other thing is with UFO sightings, it's tough now because you've got drones, you've got Starlink satellites, you've got a lot of things that can fool people. So again, not that they're not real things, but it's really hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, one thing I would have loved, if back in 1996, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Phoenix Lights case, where all the lights came out in the Phoenix area. and thousands of people saw it. And there was some limited video of that. I wish that happened now, because undoubtedly there would have been somebody with good camera equipment who would have been able to capture that. And the military said it was, flares. And then the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, came out the next day, and they had a press conference and made a joke of it, and had basically a guy dressed up in an alien costume. It was like, haha, funny. But it turned out that Symington, years later, I believe he said that he saw them too and didn't know what they were. But so again, I believe these phenomena exist. I think they're extremely difficult to capture on video.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to show lights in the sky. I said I have to have one landing in my field during the daytime with perfect lighting, so I could take a picture of it.
But I mean, I'll tell you that one of the most compelling, actually it's film, not video, but that I've ever seen was the very old 1967 Patterson-Gimlin footage of Bigfoot. Now, when I saw that when I was a kid growing up, I used to think, oh, that's just a guy in a suit. But people have taken that video and they've been able to electronically stabilize it and slow it down. And that does not look like a person in a suit. And it doesn't look like a person in a suit in 1967. You got to realize they didn't have all the trickery and fancy things that we have now with costumes and so forth. So something that in the past I was kind of like, it's a guy in a suit, I've changed my mind about because of technology and what they've been able to do with the enhancement. That being said, sometimes I tend to be a little skeptical of Bigfoot sightings. But so I always say I have a very open mind. That doesn't mean that I believe in absolutely everything all the time. But there's certainly things going on out there. And when it goes to my campfire show, for example, I believe the vast majority of people are being extremely sincere. And we come from a total place of non-judgment on that show. You come on and share your story. I am not going to cross-examine you. I'm not going to, kind of play skeptic or anything like that. I'm going to listen to your show, your story, and respect it in the manner in which you mean it.
Yeah, because no matter what, it's their story. It's a story. And if they believe it's true, then it's true for them, at least.
Right. And I believe many people who have called into the campfire have experienced something supernatural. I really do. So it's because, again, I think we live in a very strange world. And, we talked earlier about when I first started and the fact that I don't have the answers, but I do have one thing that I think I've learned. Our world is so much broader than we realize it is. And we don't give reality enough credit for what it really is, because I think there's so much that's unseen that we don't understand, and we kind of think we all have it figured out, but we don't. For example, DNA has existed forever, but scientists didn't know it existed until relatively recently. That doesn't mean it didn't exist. It means that we didn't understand it. And I've had numerous guests say over the years, and I believe this, there could be ghosts and spirits all around us right now, around you guys as you're sitting there, as I'm sitting here, and we just don't have the ability to pick it up. So I think it's very possible and, in fact, probable. And that's why I love doing this show and doing these shows. Don't know if I'll ever get any answers. I've kind of lost hope on that, I'm kind of, I'm firmly in middle age. So, I don't know if we're going to get the final answer, at least while I'm around. But it's sure fun asking the questions and learning more all the time.
I think we get answers, but it's not until we transition, or maybe we get just get to see the proof, right? It's more like seeing the proof that there's more beyond. Like the other night, I was telling my husband and I went out to look at the Northern Lights, and we could just see this haze. And I said, I think that's the Northern Lights. You can kind of see it glimmering. So I pulled out my iPhone, took a picture. You know how it's got that 3-second exposure? Yes. Well, my gosh, the lights were just amazing. You could see the green and the pink swirls and everything. And I said, I showed it to him. He says, really? I said, so I'll take it again. He goes, my gosh. I said, so imagine how much we don't see with our naked eye and how much of this world is around us because we don't have that 3-second like exposure built into our
Right.
eye or
Right.
whatever frequency. So it's kind of cool that
it's
way.
interesting because you talked about passing over, and one of my favorite topics on the show is that of the afterlife, because I feel like it's the universal subject, because we're not all going to see a UFO, we're not all going to see a Bigfoot, but eventually we're all going to make that journey. Even if you believe, which I do, that we survive this physical life and we go beyond, I believe that's true, but you still got to go through the process, and everybody has to do it. Doesn't matter how rich, how poor, how educated, whatever. It goes for the president of the United States down to little old me. So I guess my point is, I think that's universal, and I really appreciate these near-death experience stories that we get. I had a physician on, and I'm trying to remember his name. Maybe I'll be able to look it up real quick here. But he came to the idea of the afterlife as kind of a skeptic, and basically, through his experience as a physician and talking to other physicians and so forth, he came to the belief that the afterlife is real. Dr. Bruce Grayson is his name, and he wrote a great book I highly recommend it called After. A doctor explores what near-death experiences reveal about life and the beyond. And one story that he told, and I may not get it exactly right, but this is the gist of it. He was a young doctor, and he was eating in the hospital commissary, and he got spaghetti stain on his tie, spaghetti sauce. And then he had been called away to help with this case of this young girl who was near death. And I think she may have temporarily passed and came back. I think it was maybe an overdose, I'm not sure. So anyway, the next day he meets with this girl, and he has totally different clothes on and everything. And she's telling him all these things that happened that she couldn't have possibly seen while she was out. And one of them was, yesterday when you worked with me, you had a spaghetti stain on your tie. I hope you got that taken care of. And he's like, how would she know? She was totally unconscious. I think she had passed over for a short time and came back, these people with the near-death experiences. And there's so many cases of that where people are clinically dead for a short amount of time. And not only do they come back and explain, I saw the tunnel, I saw the light, I had the life review, there was a religious figure, Jesus or some other religious figure, there were family members, a lot of that's a very common experience. But many times they'll say, here's what they were doing with me medically while I was out. And they're able to see it from on high. Another example Dr. Grayson gave was, a gentleman had a near-death experience. He said, the oddest thing was the one physician, when he was working on me, I think he was a surgeon, he was flapping his arms like a bird. And Dr. Grayson thought, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Who's going to flap their arms like a bird? Well, it turned out that this doctor, to keep everything sterile, had a habit of pointing to things with his elbows. Get me the scalpel. Get me the sutures. Get me this. And that's what the guy was retelling. And he would have no way of knowing that.
Oh, my gosh.
So to me, people say, the near-death experience. It's the throes of a dying brain. It's dopamine and all these chemicals to soothe you into the dying process. It's a defense, evolutionary defense mechanism. How do you explain the spaghetti stain and the flapping arms? How do you explain that? Either somebody's lying, or it is objectively proof of something supernatural, I guess you would call it, happening after physical death. It's one or the other. And I don't believe they're lying. So, and I hate to say this, for me, things like that probably mean more, those kind of accounts mean more to me than maybe religious faith or anything, to believe that there's an afterlife, because you have people coming back telling you the things. We had one on the campfire, a woman who worked, I think, with a life flight crew, and she wore a gold jacket, I think it was. And she had occasion to meet the patient years later. And I don't know how it came about that he was one of the life flight patients. He said, "Where's your gold jacket?" He was out the whole time and died and came back. How would he know? So these kind of things happen. And again, it points to the whole idea that reality is not just what you weigh on a scale, what you can measure in a test tube, but there's far more to it, I believe.
That's really special. Have you got any new projects that are coming up? Because, I mean, we get the campfire and we get the virtual campfire and we get the paranormal podcast, which is like 65 million downloads. Is that what it is
all of them
now?
Combined. I have to be honest, all of them combined.
Oh, well,
I wish
Let's
this
split
paranormal
hairs.
podcast got 65 million by itself, but that's all my different shows combined. Well, we do a couple different things. I've been doing a show with my wife, Dar. You won't believe what happened to me. And that's about stories. It's actually a non-paranormal show, just wild stories that have happened to people. And some of them are more terrifying than ghost stories, people narrowly missing accidents and these kind of things. Then my daughter does a show called Unpleasant Dreams, where she reads spooky stories from like classic works of fiction. That's a lot of fun. And actually, this spooky season, my wife and daughter have done a series of recipe videos, spooky recipe videos that we just posted the first one, I think, on October 4th. And by the time folks see this, throughout the month, we'll have various ones of those posted on my YouTube channel. And just a really busy time. But I always direct people to the campfire. I think that's the most accessible of our shows. That's the show that people kind of, I hate to use this phrase, but the gateway drug. They listen to it and they love the spooky stories and like, oh, let's check out what else Jim does. And just a lot in the planning. Dar's working for the company now, Jim Harold Media, as her job before she was a speech therapist, and decided to step away from that a bit and try this. So we're glad to have her working on that, and she's doing great stuff. And we just keep trying to put out the shows, and hopefully people will continue to enjoy them.
Have you got those adult coloring books too going?
Oh, yeah. We've got 5 campfire books out, although I was hoping to get a 6th out by Halloween. I don't think that's happening. But working on the 6th of that. And then we have the adult campfire coloring book. And that one is basically a coloring book of different scenes from different stories of the campfire. And a very talented artist by the name of Len Peralta did those drawings. And I came up with the ideas, and he made them reality, because I can't draw a stick man, but he's extremely talented. And people, that's something that I probably should have been more aggressive with marketing, because people who get it love it. It's a very cool coloring book for grown-ups who like to color.
Doodle. Yeah, I think it's a very relaxing kind of thing. So, Jim, Bex probably has another. I think you're pretty stable now, Bex. Ask away, because I know you have a no. We've had.
It's still pretty glitchy, but we're here.
It's a weird glitchy day. I don't know why. It's strange. We don't usually have these, but anyways, you're coming in loud and clear, Jim. So that's great. Have you had any experience with any of your guests lately? And maybe you have a new favorite gemstone that somebody sent you in, or you collected in the last year or so?
Well, when I think about it, some of the favorite things. Let me see. What would be one of my favorite things? Well, I got to tell you one of my favorite episodes recently, because it really hit close to home. And this was for the Paranormal Podcast. It's called The Evil Eye. And my wife is of Italian descent, and we had Antonio Pagliarulo on the show. And he talked about the Italian tradition of, there is such a thing as the evil eye, and people can put the evil eye on you, as they call it, the Malocchio. They could put it on you intentionally or not intentionally. And that resonated with a lot of our listeners who are of Italian descent. My wife certainly loved it. And I thought that was one of my favorite episodes this year, because it's amazing how these things and these beliefs persist. And I wouldn't say that it's impossible. We were joking. We got a different house about 2.5 years ago, and we had a whole rash of things we had to fix in our house. Like it was one week it would be thing, and it's relatively it's not an old house. It's about 20 years old. And it was like 1 week you'd have to fix one thing. The next week it was something else. And I'm like, who gave us the evil eye?
I know, I never even heard of it, but my daughter-in-law is a Greek descent, and she went over and she brought me back. This is protection against the evil eye.
Yeah, and Antonio talked about how to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that is somewhat cross-cultural. It's not just Italians. I believe Greeks have a variation of it. Latino cultures have a variation of it. So it's not just solely Italian. And I always wonder when you see something like that cropping up in various cultures, it's like, well, did they all invent it separately, or is there really something to it? And I kind of think there might be something to it. It was interesting because some of my wife's relation, when they would say something like you would bring a new baby or something, they would say, oh, what a beautiful house, a baby, God bless. Or your house, oh, what a beautiful house, God bless. And Antonio was saying, for Italians at least, many times, what they would do is after they would say a compliment, they would say, God bless, or they would say, bless you, or something like that, because they wanted to guard in case they had any like unintentional envy, which could unintentionally bring on the evil eye. So I just found that a fascinating interview.
I always wondered why. Oh, okay. That makes total sense.
Now you know. And they may be doing it and not know it because it's so kind of culturally built in, that language pattern. But I remember the one family member, an older family member, oh, what a beautiful baby, God bless. What a beautiful house, God bless. What a beautiful car, God bless. You know, and it was like, oh, that's kind of an odd speaking pattern, but now I know why.
Awesome. Yeah. Bex is of Greek descent. Do you have anything on the evil eye there, Bex?
Yes. I don't, but I know that it's also a common practice to spit on people to protect them.
Oh, to protect them.
You know, we all have our things. Yep.
True.
That's awesome. Oh, so I guess what's coming up for your spooky show? What are you doing special this year? So because we'll be right before Halloween, so people can get on their spooky.
Well, we had some great shows in the month of October. We did a retroactive show, or retrospective, not retroactive, retrospective on the campfire of some of kind of like the people's choice, some of their favorite all-time campfire stories. We certainly did that. We had a great show at the beginning of October with Stan Gordon and Nick Redfern about creepy cryptids, werewolves, and Mothman. I thought that was great. To set the spooky scene. We also, late September, did a show with Adam Berry called Goodbye, Hello. And he's from TV's Kindred Spirits, of course. Then we had Glynis, the numbers lady, on the Paranormal Podcast to talk about your numbers and how she says that they impact your life. So we had some great guests and, of course, some great new spooky stories for Campfire. So our thing is that, you know, health barring, we never stop. So, in a couple days, when it's November 1st and everybody's depressed and we're saying, oh, Halloween's over, I say, do not fear. JimHerald.com, because Halloween is never over for us. It's Halloween 24/7, 365. There's thousands of episodes. JimHerald.com, and, of course, on your favorite podcasting app. And, there's kind of contenders and pretenders. People like us, we talk about these kind of things all year. And then you've got the people that come in and we'll talk about spooky stuff for a month. Ooh, boo, boo, boo. And then they're gone. But we're still here. And we're still bringing the content. So I hope that people will tune into the shows.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Because, some days you're not in the mood for spooky. And other days you just want to hear it all day long. So I know Bex loves the spooky most of the time. So I'm so glad that Teresa had to glitch out. She glitched out. She says, I can't hear the story, so I'll listen to it later. In fact, I'm so happy you made it this week, and hopefully we'll do another pre-recording so you can get there and get on the job. Have you got a favorite spooky theme song that you like to have?
This is like a constant piece of consternation for me because I was just talking about this the other day. Podcasting's been around for almost 20 years. It really started but I think really started in 2004. So next year will be the 20th anniversary. And they've still not figured out music license. There's two songs I would love to use on the show. And I remember Art Bell, the great host of Coast to Coast AM. They still do it in Coast to Coast AM. They use these beautiful bumpers with this great music. Two songs I would love to use. Donovan's Season of the Witch, which I absolutely love. And then Johnny Cash's Ghost Riders in the Sky. I would love to be able to use both those songs. I would love to be able to use on the shows as like little bumpers and stuff. But you can't do it as a podcast, and it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I would pay. I mean, this is like my job. I would pay, as long as it's a reasonable amount, I would pay if there was and I understand artists need to get paid and songwriters, and I believe in that. But there should be some kind of, we're getting off on the business of podcasting here, but there should be some kind of mechanism because I'd love to share those kind of things with the show. It's funny because the other day I shared something on Instagram. And they have the ability for you fully legally to use little music clips. And I used Season of the Witch. And I'm like, ooh, I get to use Season of the Witch. So I wish there were more chances to do that.
And my last question today is, have you seen yourself any UFOs being in spooky Ohio?
I saw something when I was very little outside the window that I thought was odd, but I've always questioned if I just saw an airplane and thought I saw something odd because I was watching too much In Search Of. Now, we did see, I will take that back, we did see a green fireball in probably the 2000s. My wife and I were driving down a main street in a Cleveland suburb, a big street, and it was funny because we saw basically what looked like a green fireball, and it was about 5:30 in the evening, but it was dark. It was, probably the wintertime when it gets dark very early. And we were listening to a talk radio station, and somebody calls in and says, I'm on such and such a road, and I just saw this green thing in the sky. And the host is like, you're having too much. You got started early tonight. You're having too much to drink. And I never heard another thing about it. Now, I fully believe it was some kind of meteorite or space junk or something going back into the atmosphere. But it's funny because I know I saw it. My wife knows I saw it. That guy that called into the radio obviously saw it, but yet you saw how it was treated. Yeah. So, that's the thing with Campfire. I hope we're a lot more welcoming than that. And we don't. We definitely don't do that.
Well, now that the U.S. government has officially proved that UFOs are real, or UAPs are real, wasn't there that conclusion of that sort of Senate committee?
Well, I think they're saying that they're real, but they don't know what they are. And I think when you talk about the government, it's very factionalized. I think there are people like Representative Moskowitz, who is Democrat, and Representative Burchett, who's Republican, and I love to see people working across the aisle on this stuff, saying, yes, there has been a cover-up and disclosure is needed. But then you've got other people. There's a gentleman, Burleson, from Missouri, who was making jokes about it during the committee meeting. So when you talk about the U.S. government, I believe there are factions. And I believe some factions want to get the truth out about UFOs, and there's a very powerful faction that does not. So I'm not super, super confident. I'm not super, super confident that that's going to happen. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, not until they land in the White House lawn and CNN broadcasts that. Anyways, thank you so much, Jim, for being here again and making our Halloween so special. And you guys, check out jimharold.com and all his he's on every podcast platform you can imagine. Go to his webpage. He's got all sorts of stuff there, merchandise, like stay spooky, guys.
Yeah, jimharold.com/merch for that.
Yeah, and it's a great T-shirt. All the way into Canada it got here. Are you doing a live podcast or a live broadcast for Halloween?
Yes, I believe this aired this will air on October 29th, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, we just did that last night then. But you can find the replay at my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/JimHarold. But we had a great time. We had some great guests. We gave away some prizes, did some trivia, had some recipes, Halloween recipes and things. So if people want to get into that live stream after the fact and watch the replay, it's over at youtube.com/JimHarold.
Okay. Well, we wish you a happy Halloween and a wonderful American Thanksgiving when that comes up, and a Merry Christmas until we see you next year. Anyways, Bex, have you got any parting words before we go?
I just enjoyed all the stories. That was great. Thank you so much for sharing all those. I love hearing all the experiences that you get to share through your viewers and your guests, because I think it just validates so much for so many people. And it's really needed. Like I always say, disclosure is not going to happen on a grand scale. It's happening person to person, you know?
That's very true. Well, thank you both. And thanks to Teresa in absentia. And happy Halloween to everyone, and stay spooky.
Stay spooky, everyone.